Welcome to today's meeting of the Environment and Climate Change Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As usual, the meeting is being broadcast live to the public. For those not able to watch live, the webcast will be recorded and made available for viewing on the County Council website after the meeting. Today, we've received apologies from Mr. Mellon, Mr. Thorpe and Mr. Rudkin. Mrs. Taylor is substituting for Mr. Mellon and Mrs. Danks is substituting for Mr. Rudkin. We don't have a substitute for Mr. Thorpe. Before we begin, can I please remind everybody to only turn on their mics when you wish to speak or invited to speak. Because this is the first meeting of the council team, it will be useful for members and officers to introduce themselves. I'll start with me. I am Tim Robinson. I'm the Reform UK County Councillor for Braunston, and I'd like to carry on with John.
John Bloxham, Blaby and Glenparva. Graham Cook, Councilsorp and Cosby.
Naomi Bottomley, Salby and the Wolds.
Beverly Gray, Loughborough South Division.
Anne Pendlebury, Hollycroft Hinckley.
Sarah Hill, Market Harbour East.
Linda Danks, Rothley and Mount Sorrel.
Peter Morris, Loughborough North.
Adam Tilbury, Forest and Measham and Cabinet for Environment and Flooding.
Charles Whitford, Markfield, Thornton and Desford, also portfolio holder, highways, transport and waste.
Good afternoon, Anne Crothers. I'm Director of the Environment and Transport Department.
Afternoon all, I'm Joanna Gill. I'm the Assistant Director for Environment and Waste.
Good afternoon, James O'Brien, Team Manager for Environment Policy and Strategy.
Good afternoon everybody, my name is Craig Smith. I'm the local member for the Colville North Division.
Good afternoon, Chair. Deborah Taylor, Member for Bradgate.
Nick Chapman, so I'm member for Glenfields, Code Muxlow and the Forest Division, and obviously I've been on this committee for the last 4 years, as well as Vice Chairman at the end of last term.
Joanne Toomey, Democratic Services Manager.
Akil Sarang, Democratic Services.
Thank you, everybody. Could I just ask you to maybe just tilt your nameplates towards the front? I've discovered recently that I'm getting a little short-sighted, so I'm going to have to be looking for new spectacles at some point, just so I know your name whenever you ask questions. We'll come to item 1, appointment of chairman. Committee members are asked to note that I've been appointed chairman of the Environment and Climate Change Overview and Scrutiny Committee in accordance with Rule 6A of the Overview and Scrutiny Procedure Rule 4E of the County Council's Constitution. Moving on to agenda item 2, which is the appointment of Vice Chairman, can I ask for nominations for the position of Deputy Chairman, please?
I'd like to propose John Bloxham.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. And one more.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose Councillor Nick Chapman. He's a former previous Deputy Chair of this the committee and he served on it for 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to second that nomination. Thank
you, Mrs. Doe. Okay, well, we've got if there are no other nominations, let's see, we need to have a secret ballot because we received more than one nomination. So that'll be administered by Democratic Services Officer now, please.
We just switch the mic off. Thank you for your patience. I can confirm that Dr. Bloxham has received 5 votes and Mr. Chapman has received 7 votes. There were no abstentions. I can confirm that Mr. Chapman has been appointed Vice Chairman of the committee until the end of the council year.
Okay, thank you for that, everybody. The next item is the minutes of the last meeting held on 12th of March 2025. I move these are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Are we all in agreement? Okay, item 4, we come to agenda item 4, question time. I've received 1 question from Mr. Adam Stairs. The question and my response have been circulated to members of the committee prior to the start of the meeting and will be taken as read. These have also been published on the council's website for public information. I'd like to remind members there is to be no discussion held on this. Right, I just heard that Mr. Stairs is not actually here, so we'll move on to point number 5, which is questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. I haven't received any such questions. Okay. Question 6, agenda item 6. I have no urgent items. Item 7 is declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Do any members have any interest they wish to declare? Yes, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair. So I currently sit as the chairman of the Bardon Liaison Aggregate Committee. That came out wrong. Bardon Aggregate Liaison Committee, rather. And just for a point of clarity as well, I sit on the Conservative Environmental Network as an ambassador and a board advisor.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Taylor?
I'm chairman of the Braggart Park Trust that could possibly be connected with item 10.
Okay. Dr. S. Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a trustee of a charity that owns land that is highlighted on the local nature recovery plan for 2 or 3 sort of suitable habitats. So I just wanted to be noted. We weren't aware of the plan and our possible tiny part in it, but there we go. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. And Mrs. B. Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to declare that I sit on the Cabinet of Charnwood Borough Council as lead member for Climate Action, Biodiversity, Net Zero. Thank you.
And Mrs. Pendlebury, is it? Oh, sorry, Ms. Pendlebury.
Thank you. I sit on the Climate Change Committee at Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Chapman.
I'm also a member of the Conservative Environmental Network.
Right. Impressive lineup. Okay. I'll move on to item 8 then. Declarations of the party whip. Do any members wish to declare the party whip? Okay, thank you. Item 9. I've not received any petitions. And moving on to item 10, this is the FLNRS, or Final Local Nature Recovery Strategy. There's going to be a presentation by Anne Carruthers, Director of Environment and Transport. She'll introduce it and is joined by Joe Gill, who I wasn't expecting, and James O'Brien, is it? Yeah. So over to you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'll just give a brief overview and then I'll hand over to my colleague James O'Brien, who will take the committee through the Local Nature Recovery Strategy. This report brings to you our final draft version of the Local Nature Recovery Strategy. This is actually a statutory requirement. It's a new statutory duty from the government a couple of years ago on across the country. And we were appointed as the responsible authority by government to develop the Local Nature Recovery Strategy for Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland area. We've undertaken that work with our various partners, including the City Council, Rutland County Council, the district authorities, Natural England, Forestry Commission and a whole host of other stakeholders and partners. We've had an engagement exercise and we've more recently had a public consultation on this draft that's come before you as well. The draft itself, the strategy itself, is all about identifying those areas important for nature and setting out proposals about how we go about protecting and enhancing nature across the LLR area. The report includes the outcomes of that recent public consultation and seeks the committee's comments on this draft before you prior to going to Cabinet next week and then on to full council for approval. But I'll hand over to James, who'll take you through to give you a flavour of the document. James.
Thank you, Anne. Yes, as Anna said, I'll take you through a presentation which I hope gives you an overview of the local nature recovery strategy, its background, what it contains, the outcomes of the recent public consultation, and also an indication of future immediate next steps. So, first of all, as has already been said, the purpose of the presentation is to present the final local nature recovery strategy before going to Cabinet and full council later this month in early July, and after which it is then sent to the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and they have the final say on approval for publication. And yes, the committee is asked to note the contents of the presentation and also to provide any comments you may have. Bit of background on the actual local nature recovery strategies themselves. So they were introduced as part of the Environment Act 2021. They provide a new mandatory system of spatial strategies covering all of England. They're designed to drive nature's recovery and deliver on wider environmental benefits, and are part of the wider programme of activities to contribute towards the National Environmental Improvement Plan and also the meeting of the National Environmental Targets and other commitments. They are one of a suite of mechanisms and tools introduced by the Environment Act and other pieces of legislation to help deliver on the achievement of the environmental targets on air, biodiversity, water and waste. We are one of 48 local nature recovery strategy areas across England. We're number 19 there in the middle of the country, which is relevant because we also have to work with our neighbouring local nature recovery strategy areas as well. And we have 8 of those to work with. So back in 2023, Leicestershire County Council was appointed as what's called the responsible authority, so basically the lead authority to take the lead on the development of the strategy for Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland. We received what's called new burdens funding to fulfil that role, about £340,000. We have a balance of approximately £145,000 from that funding, which has been rolled into this year and will feed into the delivery of the strategy going forward. We are awaiting details of the 25-26 funding grant. Hopefully after today, we might know that. I had an email this morning suggesting we should know by the end of the month. As part of developing the strategy, we established a steering group of officers from the county, city and Rutland councils, as well as a nominee from representing the 7 districts. And we also had officers from the key, what are called DEFRA supporting bodies, Natural England, the Environment Agency, Forestry Commission and the National Forest Company. The committee has received 2 reports on the local nature recovery strategy previously. Back in June 23, it was kind of introducing to the strategy itself and that role as responsible authority. And then back in 22nd of Jan of this year, the committee received a report on the draft local nature recovery strategy as part of the public consultation exercise. And this slide just showing some of the key partners and organisations we've worked with across the public, private and voluntary sectors in developing the strategy over the last approximately 2 years. We had to follow a prescribed process, a 5-step process in order to develop the strategy, and that process was complemented with particular legislation and guidance we were required to follow and meet and were assessed on as part of the process. And I will return to that later on. Just thought it'd be useful to highlight the particular nature of the habitats of Leicestershire and Rutland. As you can see from the map on the screen, it's very much a kind of pixelated picture showing that other than the large urban areas, the habitats across the area are quite mixed up across there. We don't have large swathes other than possibly Rutland Water where you've got that habitat. So it makes it a bit more complicated, a bit more interesting in terms of how we can protect and enhance and connect habitats and connect the species and so on that live within those various habitats. So it's one of the challenges that we've got in terms of delivering the strategy going forward. So again, early on in the process, back in March, July 24, we undertook an early stage of engagement with stakeholders, partners and the members of the public, asking their views on nature recovery, etc., what are their priorities, what are the concerns, fears, etc. We held a whole, I won't go through it, but we held a whole range of workshops and briefing sessions and online, offline. We also had an interactive map that allowed people to make their own comments and so on. You can see the figures on the screen in terms of the numbers that we received. We also assessed over 100 existing strategies and plans from across the area and making sure that we feed into and support those strategies in the delivery of the strategy going forward. Another significant part of the work was collecting, analysing, interpreting, mapping data, hundreds if not thousands of layers of data from a whole myriad of sources. The map on the screen is just an example. That's a hedgerow heat map, so it shows where there are low and high levels of hedgerows. So the idea would be where there's low levels of hedgerows, you want to try to increase them, you want to try to protect the areas where there's high levels of hedgerows. We also looked at other maps around flood risk, future areas development, agricultural grade land, etc., and what you'd expect in terms of the habitats and so on. So again, that was a massive piece of work, and we availed of the services of an external company to help us do the modelling and the mapping and so on for that, which was very helpful in identifying where the priorities are, etc. So in terms of the content of the strategy, again, this was prescribed in terms we had to meet certain criteria and requirements in terms of content. So again, in summary, it includes the overall strategic aims of the strategy, an area description, a state of nature section based on the available data that we do have. It identifies the existing areas of particular importance to biodiversity, which account for roughly 7% of the land area and made up of your local nature reserves, SSSIs, local wildlife sites, regionally important geological sites, etc. So that's about 7% of the area. We also then identified key environmental and other considerations and pressures that would affect the strategy as we move into delivery. In addition, again, the key requirement was to identify the areas that could become important for biodiversity and wider environmental benefits and so on. And that's on the map that is part of the slide link. And that accounts for potentially 35% of the land area. So you can see the potential to go from 7% to 35% of the area being kind of managed and important for nature. For each of those kind of the priority areas, we also have to identify what biodiversity priorities and measures or actions would take place within those. And again, the document itself and the map sets out what those priorities and measures are. And I should make clear that the strategy is not a delivery plan, but we do set out some of the key factors needed to be considered in once we move into that delivery phase. It also contains a whole suite of appendices that provide supporting and backing information on the technical detail behind the strategy itself. Again, not going to go through these in great depth, but you can see the priority habitats. We identified woodland, freshwater, grassland, etc. One that's unique to our area at the moment, but others are seeking to copy, is geodiversity. Because of the unique and important geodiversity of the area, we felt it in itself was an important habitat to have as a priority, and building on the work of the Charnwood Forest Geopark and so on. So that's other areas, as I said, are seeking to copy what we've done there. We also identified 113 priority species. Again, we had to work within certain criteria in identifying those. And that was a massive piece of work involving loads of local experts and county recorders and different environmental groups to identify those 113 species. In addition, we decided to also identify what we're calling indicator species. So these are species that, with a little bit of guidance and training, any member of the public should be able to identify, and they're designed, if you see an increase in those species, it's an indicator that that habitat is in good condition or improving. So we're hoping going forward to have opportunities for citizen science and involved community and kids and various people in the monitoring and checking on the improvement that's taking place in the habitats across the area. In addition to those priorities within those particular priority areas, we also identified what are called landscape scale priorities. So these are priorities that can happen anywhere across the area, not just in the 25% area. And again, not going through the list, but you can see that particular priorities around hedgerows, roadside verges, invasive species, and various management of particular habitats. And again, you've got some examples of some of the measures, the planting of hedges, wildflower margins, etc. Again, just to expand a bit more on those priority species, the 113 priority species and the indicator species. I'm not going into detail there. Now, moving on to the public consultation that took place between the 6th of January and the 28th of February. So in doing that, we provided the public and stakeholders the draft local nature recovery strategy, also a shortened 20-page summary version, and various what are called local habitat maps that people could look at, analyse. And we also had a particular map that people could make comments on as well, an interactive map. We held 24 in-person and online events over the period, engaging with over 360 people, as well as the usual newspaper and social media publicity that took place. The key results from the public consultation: we received 386 completed surveys, as well as 6 written submissions. We received 307 comments on the interactive map, and in addition to the 1,600 approximately comments that were made in the survey, so almost 1,900, over 1,900 comments received. I have to say most of those comments were very positive and supportive of the strategy and what it was trying to do, with 97% of respondents agreeing with the strategic aims of the strategy, and the other questions had an agreement rate between 70 and 95% as well. So very, high levels of local support for what the strategy is trying to do and what it's looking to achieve. We believe this high level of support has been contributed to by the effort we put in at early doors, engaging with people, involving the key organisations and partners and stakeholders in the process, and allowing them to be part of the process, in some cases writing particular sections of the strategy itself to give them the ownership and buy-in and so on to the document. We also put a lot of thought and effort into the design, layout, tone and language in the strategy as well. We hope it's very easy read, engaging document, and one that encourages people to engage in nature recovery as we move forward. As a result of the comments that we received, most of those that kind of merited change related to improving the accuracy and the clarity of the document, which was most welcome. So we've, again, won't go through the detail, but we've added a couple of new paragraphs, new sections that we had missed on or people suggested could be useful to add. We clarified some of the stats that we used. We worded a couple of paragraphs to make them clearer. We made one image change, and we also added in a bit more detail on the priorities have got codes, and we've now put them in the document, not just in the maps. So it just makes it clearer for people. We also made some changes and improvements to the maps themselves, clarifying boundary lines, and also there was a missing data set as well that was identified. So we've added that to the mapping. This slide just shows the links to the actual final local nature recovery strategy document, and also to those local habitat maps, which I would encourage you to look at, because it brings it to life, really, the maps in terms of where the priorities are, what the measures are, etc. So the process from now, well, just go back a bit. So back in April, 22nd of April, we presented to a panel from Natural England, which is part of the official approval process. And we were approved by Natural England using the government guidance to go forward to the approval process and publication. The final strategy was also issued to the supporting authorities, the other local authorities and supporting bodies. back on the 23rd of April, and they, again, under the regulations, had 28 days in order to raise any formal objections. Glad to say no formal objections were received, and if anything, we got loads of support in the quality and the nature and the content of the strategy itself. As well as going through the formal approval process of Leicester County Council, the strategy is also going through the approval processes of the other local authorities as well, with the final approval point being the full council meeting on the 2nd of July. And as I mentioned previously, once it's gone through our local approval processes, it's then sent to the Secretary of State for formal approval by the government to allow us to publish. We are holding a launch event to celebrate and thank everyone for the massive effort that's taken place to develop the strategy. That's taking place on the 8th of July, appropriately in Brooksby Hall, which is an agricultural college. And we're also teaming up with colleagues in public health they're having an event in the afternoon around the good food. Again, showing the links between nature and food and food security and food quality and so on. So last slide then, just touching on delivery. So within the strategy document itself, chapter 10, we talk about the key factors for moving into delivery. Part of that is how we lever working with partnerships and bringing people together, organisations together. A key important partner in all of this will be farmers. Farmland makes up 80% of the area, so farmers and landowners are going to be key partners in delivery. So we're working very closely with the NFU and the CLA, and we engage extensively with farmers and landowners during the process. There's also a role for individual action, what people can do in their own back gardens, on their windowsills, in their communities, in their local parks, in allotments, etc. So again, we'll be looking to work with and encourage individuals and communities to take action. Most importantly, we need to secure funding to make it all happen as well. So there's going to be a mixture of other funding sources made available to enable particular aspects and strands of work to take place. But there's also an expectation that we would try to secure independent external investment as well through maybe green bonds and other funding streams like that. But that's a whole piece of work that will have to be developed moving forward. It's also important to share knowledge and create capacity within the communities and groups and organisations that will be working with us as we go forward. So we're planning to develop, subject to funding, etc., a training and an education programme as well to support the work as we move forward, because the more people understand and appreciate nature and know what to do, the more they will be willing to hopefully engage and deliver the work on the ground. So as we speak, we've started work as a steering group on developing the delivery plan and looking at what changes we need to make to the governance structure to move into a delivery governance structure rather than a development structure. And from that, then we'll seek to develop a monitoring and reporting framework, the training capacity building I mentioned, as well as undertaking that program of partnership engagement, because it will require the involvement of a whole range of people across the public and private and voluntary sector to make this happen and make this reality happen. And again, it's not something that's going to be done in a couple of years. We're talking about a multi-decade project. It'll go on for hopefully a long time and be successful. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Tilbury, is there anything you wish to add?
I would say I'm in support of the strategy.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from members? Ms. Pendlebury.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Yes, just one question. I noticed there's very little emphasis on waterways in respect of we have significant sewage going into our waterways. I know around Hinckley there are at least 2 or 3 rivers that are almost getting daily sewage input, and I couldn't find any sort of reference to that, and I would have thought that was quite an important factor within a climate recovery.
Yeah, yes, I believe there is.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I believe there is reference. Fresh water is one of the priority areas, and we have a whole suite of measures for that. So I believe it is in there. We do make mention to the issues around water quality and the sewage discharge as part of that piece of work.
Thank you. I'm obviously going blind.
and Mr. Chapman.
It's a great this report. I mean, I've seen this obviously grows. It's absolutely brilliant how it's come on. Just one question: as we have new developments who start planting forests and as offset stuff, will these be added to this and then revisited to see how they are going in the future?
Yeah, so that goes back to the point I made earlier around the different funding mechanisms for delivering the strategy. So biodiversity net gain is one of those funding strategies. So as part of the process of BNG, there will be a requirement to count and add up all the BNG that happens and understand what habitats and improvements have been made, and they will be added to the maps as the new information becomes available, and that will be added to the data layer. So that will be part of the monitoring of the delivery and implementation of the strategy. Yes.
All right, just to come back to him on that.
Yeah, sure, please.
I'd just like to say again, just brilliant for the work you've done in this and watching this grow over the last 18 months since we first saw this here. It's been absolutely brilliant in the work you've put in. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Taylor, did you have a comment?
Thank you. I didn't realise I was next on the list, but thank you. Yeah, obviously, like Nick, this was under deputy when I was deputy leader, and then obviously the final year as leader, bringing this forward. So really good piece of work. So I think credit to all the staff and all the work that you've put in. It's not been an easy piece of work, and I just want to put on record the credit to all of you for all your hard work. And I think also about the partners and the councils involved, it's been a real good example of how when everyone comes together what we can produce. So I think, you know, we need to give credit where credit's due. A couple of points from me. The first one was on that paragraph 27 where you said 97% of respondents agreed with the strategic aims, which is really good. Were you happy with the overall sort of public response? I know we did lots of different ways of engaging and we probably reached more people than we could actually count, but were you happy with the public engagement?
Never happy with the public engagement. I also always want to engage with more people and get more views and comments. But I think over the two forms of engagement that we took place, I think it's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people in total. You know what I mean? So I think it's probably more about quality than quantity in many ways, because the quality of the engagement has been excellent. And I think it just showed the level of interest in nature and wanting it to be better and protected. So I think I'm happy from that perspective, but always looking for more if we can get it. Thank you.
Thank you both. Ms. Gray, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, a comment again, I just want to echo what colleagues have said. This is such an important piece of work. It's such an impressive piece of work. And I also note the prudent use of grants so that there is some money remaining to support with delivery. I know we're expecting additional grants to support with that as well. A couple of questions. It's very difficult, isn't it? Because I appreciate the devil's in the detail of delivery, and this is complex. I wondered if we had an anticipated time frame for developing the delivery plan. I was really pleased to note the reference to a sharing platform. I think that could be really critical to make various stakeholders aware of opportunities, and I wondered whether it was anticipated that the county council would be responsible for that platform, how that might work. I realise I have three questions. My final one, sorry Chair, is in terms of challenges, the government are currently obviously looking at a planning and infrastructure bill. I wonder whether we anticipate some challenges arising from that and whether we're feeding into that process of consultation. Thank you.
Dr. Block. Oh, sorry.
I'll just answer those first three questions.
Sure.
So on the delivery plan, so as I said, we've already started working on it as a steering group. A key piece of information we don't have is how much money we've got, so which makes it difficult to develop a plan. So as I said, we hope to have that answer within the next couple of weeks. And then it'll probably take us a couple of months to work up the delivery plan. I think it's going to be somewhat of a living document, the delivery plan. We'll have an initial delivery plan for maybe 6-12 months. And a key part of that will be identifying what pipeline of projects is feasible, because there's some stuff that people are going to do anyway. So it's about how we identify those, build those into a program, identify what other priority projects are needed, and then work up how do we raise the funding to make those happen. So I'm envisioning it'll be quite an iterative process. We'll develop a plan. won't go quite as we thought. We'll have to revisit and return and keep it as a living document. The landscape is quite changeable at the moment, as you kind of intimated. And on the second question about the sharing platform, yes, we want to develop a sharing platform. We are looking at different options about hosting and cost. Again, we don't want to invest in a solution that we then can't afford to maintain. So again, it's linked to the question around funding and how we can secure funding that allows us to maintain a software platform solution that is useful to people. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg on that one at the moment, but we'd like to have a good solution if we can afford it. On the challenges, yes. So particularly the contents of the planning bill, some of those are backward steps from where we were started off 2 years ago. We are feeding into the consultation process. So we've got two at the moment, one on the proposed changes to nationally significant infrastructure projects, and the other one around small scale development. So yes, we will be feeding into both those consultations.
Thank you, James. John Broxham.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I was interested to see that it talks about flood risk maps and it talks about flooding. It doesn't really go into much detail. Have you done much research on that? Is it more that you're expecting that more biodiversity will just naturally increase flooding, or are you planning to more strategically site woodland, riparian woodland and that sort of thing to focus on specific flood risk areas? Thanks.
Yes, exactly. Yes, so a lot of the measures that will take place within the flood zone areas will be to try and mitigate, reduce the scale and nature of the flooding that takes place. So working with the landowners to look at riparian solutions, looking at maybe changing the course of the water, deepening it, widening it, meandering it, because one of the problems is the straightening of the rivers that took place in the 50s, 60s and 70s and so on, which means the volume of water goes quicker than the river and into the towns and cities and so on. So all those options are on this table. We'll try and look at for natural flood management solutions where possible, where we get that dual benefit of reducing, preventing flooding, but also the nature benefit as well. And where engineering solutions are needed, that will be part of the mix of conversation with the key partners, Environment Agency, landowner, Natural England, etc.
Thanks, that sounds fantastic. Keep us updated for our areas.
Thank you. Dr. Hill.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of what I was going to ask has been asked, so that's great. I just do think it's interesting. You've had a really good level of engagement compared to last week I was here with Adult Social Care and they've done a big strategy review and nothing like this. I think it just reflects how passionate an awful lot of people are about this whole topic. And I think it's all going to be in the delivery. You've already touched on that in quite some detail, so I won't bother asking you again because I think you've covered it very well. And you're right, it's a multi-decade thing. It's taken decades to get to this not very wonderful state, and that's not driven by this council. It's a little bit outside factors. But hopefully we can be part of making it sort of better again and for the benefit of all of us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Sorry, yes, Mr. Smith, I believe you've got a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo colleagues around the room and express my thanks as well for the work that you've put into this project. It is a fantastic project, and we're all behind you on this side of the room as well as. Just going back really to what Mrs. Taylor said, I promise I'm not copying her homework. I actually wrote it before, so it is on this. But it all boils down to engagement. It's something that I've noticed over the last 4 years in pretty much every department. We had 24 in-person and online events, which yielded 360 communications, which breaking down is 15 per event. It's not a lot. You go to Bragwick Park on a sunny day and there's tens of thousands of people there. If we continue to keep doing the same thing over and over, we're not going to get different results. There are people who's, just the engagement around this table shows you how passionate people are about this subject. Is there things that we can be doing to get more engagement and to proactively go out there and source it so that rather than seeing in double digits, we see in quadruple plus? Thank you.
Again, like I said earlier, there's always more you can do, but it requires money and staff resource, and that was one of the kind of limitations we had to work with and time. We had limited time as well. I think we have identified the need to probably change and adapt and improve our engagement going forward. But again, that's why we hope the citizen science is a way of giving people real opportunities to engage in nature itself and then get them involved. And the education and training as well will also be an opportunity to engage people. And I think, as David Attenborough says, once somebody values something, they will try to protect it. So it's that kind of learning curve that we need to take people on that journey.
Mr. Smith.
If I may just come back with a follow-up question then. As a marketeer myself, and we constantly retarget. So if we get engagement from clients, we'll then if they've not bought into the product, we'll then retarget them in future. Is the council doing the same thing?
Again, I have a background in marketing myself. I think it's a lot easier to do it when you're selling a product than a concept. So I think, and when you're targeting the whole of population, it's a lot more difficult to do marketing. But we'll have to break down our audience and look at which particular key, young people, retired people, for I don't know, whatever. There's a whole range of particular target audiences within that larger group of the residents of the area. You know what I mean? So we do need to understand that a bit more and be a bit more sophisticated. So I accept your point, but it's not easy. Marketing companies have big budgets and loads of experts and stuff behind that as well. So we need to copy them within the resources that we have available. Thank you.
Thank you both. Are there any last question? Oh, one more question, Mrs. Taylor.
Thank you. Just picking up about the funding. So we had new burdens funding. Was that just for a limited time, a number of years? So obviously that's come to an end, I take it now, is it?
Yeah, so we had about £340,000 of new burdens funding up until the end of last financial year. We had an underspend of 145,000, which we've carried forward into this year. And any day, any week now, we should know what the funding we're going to get for 25-26. Beyond that, there's no commitment as such, though it may come out of the spending review today, if in the detail afterwards, because obviously that's for the next 3 years, and it'd be interesting to see if there's a line for the local nature recovery strategy within that, and then it'll take time for it to trickle down in terms of what will come to us.
Okay.
Can I just come back to it?
Oh, sure, yeah, go on then.
I did listen to the spend review. I don't remember anything in there, to be honest, but it might be in the devil's in the detail, as always. Yeah, they were just headlines today, weren't they? So all that funding obviously came to us as the upper tier and the lead for this. So is there any chance of some of the other partners and the other councils that we're working for would look to fund some of this going forward, rather than it just rely fully on the county council to fund some of this? Are those conversations happening with that?
They haven't needed to be had because we've had the money. And the money was on the staffing and to actually develop the strategy. When we move into delivery, I think there will be opportunities to have that conversation, particularly where that organisation is benefiting because their land is going to be improved, whatever else, you know what I mean? So we will be having those wider conversations with a whole range of partners and stakeholders about what funding they can bring to the table, or what funding can they access through their particular, for example, some of the, like the Wildlife Trust, for example, can access funding that we can as the local authority. So we'll be exploring all those opportunities where we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm acutely aware that we're running short of time, so we're going to move on. The committee is being asked for comments ahead of consideration by the Cabinet at its meeting on 17th of June and submission to Council for approval on 2nd of July. The comments now made by the committee will be recorded in the minutes. Which brings us up to item 11, incorporation of energy from waste and waste incineration facilities into the UK emissions trading scheme. And it's an update from Anne Carruthers, Director of Environment.
I shall just hand over to my Assistant Director, Joe Gill, for this one, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Chair, and I'll just introduce Anna Law, who's a team manager in one of my waste policy and strategy sections of the branch, and her team have worked in the background on supporting some of the consultation responses to this. So if there are questions, we'll try and answer them for you. So through you, Chair, this is, as you said, it's arguably a bit of a point in time information update. It was actually requested by this committee previously, so I know there's lots of new faces, but could we articulate what's going on with the emissions trading scheme? So it's updating on the emerging central government plans to incorporate energy from waste facilities into what's called the UK ETS, Emissions Trading Scheme, from 2028. And just for this committee, highlight any potential implications as a result of that. So for context, this represents one of a number of sort of changes to waste legislation as the sector is going through what I'd class as a bit of a sort of landscape scale period of change. We've been in a fairly steady state for 30 plus years, and then I seem to spend a lot of time bringing all new legislation in the last 2 years and probably for the next 3 or 4. So it's part of a suite of measures. This one obviously looking at kind of decarbonising the waste stream and the management of it. So the policy and background sections of the report set out the Council's duties as a waste disposal authority, explains our waste strategy. That's a joint strategy that we have with the district councils. It's a mandatory requirement, and our commitments therein. And that's to move us away from landfill. There's also some history in the report on the government's setting up of emissions trading scheme, which in essence is a greenhouse gas emissions trading scheme which looks to reduce emissions. So ETS, it's technically something called a cap and trade system. It sets a cap on the total carbon emissions allowed to be released by all sectors that fall into scope, and that allowance decreases over time to achieve the ambition to reduce emissions. ETS currently covers energy intensive industries, so it's in existence at the moment, but those sectors are things like oil and gas refining, aviation, cement production. There's a few more alluded to in the report. And it applies to non-biogenic fossil carbon only. So in simple terms, for waste management, that's arguably plastics that end up in that black bag residual waste. There's still quite a lot of it in there, but that's what's falling into scope. How it currently works is that facilities that fall into scope have to, in effect, surrender allowances each year to cover their emissions, and they either buy them or they trade them. And one allowance equates to 1 tonne of carbon emitted. Obviously, those facilities can also invest in technology to reduce those emissions and their liability. There is a graph at point 12 in the report which shows some of the historic prices for traded allowances, and it gives you the latest value of what we call a carbon allowance. So the last one that we have was of January this year. So in terms of why it affects the council, in 2023, the government confirmed that it intends to include energy from waste and waste incineration in the scheme from 2028, and that'll follow a 2-year phasing in period. And while the cost of carbon emissions will fall onto the energy from waste operators, it is anticipated that they will look to pass through those costs to customers, and that includes us as a local authority, as a disposal authority. The report does include some research by the Local Government Association as to the potential scale of that financial risk going forward. And I won't go into all the numbers, but you know, if you project out to sort of 2035, 2036, you're talking about over £1 billion worth of costs that will fall to local government if all of those costs are passed through contractually to local authorities. A further issue that I think is important to the council is any risks to following the waste hierarchy. We don't want to see that eroded. You know, we want reduction, reuse, recycling, composting, energy from waste, recover the energy from the waste before we end up at landfill. So we don't want some sort of perverse reversal where actually energy from waste is more expensive and we see material passing back to landfill. And obviously the reason we've moved away from landfill, that effectively was done through a slightly different form of taxation. So we've been asked by this committee in the past how landfill tax works, but landfill tax was introduced in the mid-90s, 1996, and it's a tax on each tonne of waste that you put into landfill, but it's been really effective in that period of decades since in pushing waste away from landfill. So this is a different, you might say taxation, but a different financial mechanism, but it will sit alongside that going forward. So obviously, the UK Emissions Trading Scheme Authority have acknowledged that they would obviously want to avoid that happening, that swing between landfill and incineration. And it would also go against a host of those other pieces of legislation, some in the report around recycling, composting, etc. So hopefully, I think what I'm saying is I hope members will see that this is actually a policy. It's still very much forming. But for officers, we'll have to continue to fully engage in the technical consultations to highlight the financial risks to the local authority, particularly as the council has, I would say, a very limited ability to control what residents place in their black bin. We have an absolute duty to deal with it once it comes to us, once the districts have collected it, but it's very difficult for us to effect a change in what's in there once it's in there. The financial risks have been reflected in the current medium-term financial strategy. So we've made all members aware, and that's because that MTFS covers the period up to 2028. So it is included within that. There is some additional information in the report around the risks and the complexities of things like the monitoring methods that are proposed in terms of how do you measure how much carbon's in there pre or post combustion. And there's a number of variables which will make it difficult for the council to robustly financially plan. It's arguably, I would say, it's far more complicated than landfill tax. You know, you have to consider the price per allowance at a future point in time, and they're traded, so they're not fixed. The means by which that biogenic content might be calculated, which is changeable, and the tonnes that we ultimately contractually send. So we've got a lot more things going on to try and make a really good financial assessment. All this information is obviously expanded on in the report, and there is reference to some linked legislation under what's called the collection and packaging reforms. So not to paint a gloomy picture of this piece of legislation, there are other pieces of legislation that interact with it that could have a real positive benefit, you know, removing packaging from residual waste, etc. And that falls on the packagers themselves, not on local government funding. So we just need to see how some of these pieces of legislation play out. Lastly, just going back to the resource implications, I think if the council, which is what we've done as officers, plans for full cost pass-through from our contractors from 2028, we estimate the cost to the county council for that financial year will be £6 million. And as I said, we've had to bake it into the medium-term financial strategy. And I'll just finish with potentially next steps. Obviously, officers will reassess this issue going forward as the government. We're waiting on the government's response to its latest technical consultation. So when that's published, obviously we will assess that and update the information that and the position that we think we're in at that point in time. And I just thought, just through you, Chair, just for all members' information, I know we're lucky that we've got both portfolio holders here today. My understanding is going forward, obviously, if we were asked to bring back updates on this, technically it's a waste issue. So if there are changes within the structure of the committees that this reflects environment and flooding, there is a possibility that any asks would ask us to take it to what is currently highways and transport would become highways, transport and waste. So we would just make sure as officers that we take the update to the most appropriate committee as requested. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joe. That's great. Mr. Whitford, do you have anything to add?
Not a lot. Just to say thank you. Great report. And I am getting my teeth into it slowly. Hopefully next time we'll have a better. And I do look on it as a tax. Really terrible. Thank you.
Yes, that was very much my same thought. Okay, well, are there any questions or comments from members? Mr. Tilbury.
As we're potentially going to be stuck with this, would it be, have the council got anything in mind to get like marketing out, say Leicestershire Matters, to make people aware of this and what they put in their black bin for landfill, to get it out there and make them understand what potential impact is of putting stuff in landfill, AA tax rises, council tax rises, because we're going to have to absorb this cost. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. The short answer is a little bit like Mr. O'Brien said. We absolutely do. We do broad communications with our district colleagues. So in effect, we have this waste partnership. So whilst, yes, absolutely, we don't want to step on any district colleagues' toes. So they are doing active promotions around what should or shouldn't go in their bins. They're planning for the size of those containers, but they do absolutely interact with ourselves as the disposal authority. Ultimately, the linked question is, are we doing enough? We're never doing enough, which is the theme today, but it does come down to our time, capacity and money to invest. But we do, with our comms colleagues, use as many of the channels that we can, and we have web spaces and social media, etc., that we push out those messages, and we do promote sort of very specifically campaigns around targeting what we'll call contamination or the wrong things going in the wrong bins, because ultimately that has a huge cost to the county council.
Yes, please do, Mr. Tilbury.
Yeah, going back to what Mr. Smith brought up about marketing, maybe the council members, we could start making this on our social media platforms, which is free of charge. Obviously, we're not costing the council, just to get to as many people as possible to know this. So obviously, it impacts us less in the future. Thank you.
Ms. Gray, was it?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to officers for flagging this up and doing such work on looking at what the potential risks and costs might be. I appreciate this is actually a nascent report at the moment. We've got an awful lot that we've still got to clarify, and it will be very interesting to see how the extended producer responsibility reforms work out alongside this. My question actually is just linked to the final comment there, and this may well have been decided pre me being elected chair, so I could be very ignorant here, but I just wonder why the nature of this committee might change such that waste would no longer be within its remit, because to me, as an environment committee, you would expect that it would be on here. So I just wondered if anyone could clarify that for me. I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Anne Crowes.
I think it could partially assist. Just the way the portfolios have been divided under the new leadership. It's environment and flooding is being put together, and highways, transport and waste. So that's a change the way the previous portfolio holders were, and the committees reflected that. So the committees would then be reflecting the portfolio holders' responsibilities. So that's where the change is. That, I understand, requires a change to the constitution, which is why waste is still coming to this committee, because technically it's still operating under the old portfolios, but I understand there are proposals to change the constitution to reflect the new portfolio duties and remit. Therefore, this would be environment and flooding, and the other one would be highways, transport and waste. However, exactly as you say, there is a clear link between environment and waste. They're absolutely integrated. It's how you slice a pie.
Does that answer it for you? Very good. Mr. Taylor.
I think it might be easier to change the portfolios than the constitution, to be honest. So maybe that needs looking at. I suppose this points me back to my question that I constantly ask is, are we going to go back to the districts and work with them to have a one collection for Leicestershire and not 7 different ones that are collecting different things in different colour bins and no one knows what should go in where? So I think maybe that's something the lead member would be willing to cover again, to be in discussions with all the districts. It might happen under LGR, it might not, but it would make things a lot simpler for residents if we had a one collection rather than that. So that's my first point. Second point, that £6 million that you quoted is an absolute horrendous number, and if we're going to get charged that, then that charge is going to go through in council tax. So if people put the wrong stuff in the wrong bins, they're going to get charged for it in a roundabout way by their council tax going up. So there is some real education to get out there that we need to do. And then my final point is where are these incinerators going to be and how many will we need?
Yeah, I'll cover part and then I'll hand over to Joe if that's all right, Ms. Taylor. We have tried in the past to get, one collection, etc. And districts have never been up for that. As you know, they all have their individual arrangements. The only other thing, and we'd love to see, obviously there be economies of scale, etc. There be consistency. The other thing, however, that is the simpler collections or the simpler recycling stuff that has been implemented as part of these wider waste changes. I mean, we're seeing the biggest changes in the waste sector for decades now. So we've got the extended producer responsibility, the collection and packaging reforms, etc. As part of that, you will see a consistency. So they will all be collecting the same thing. So I think it will become easier for residents to try and do the right thing. Most people are trying to do the right thing. They're just, it's not always clear.
I think they're very confused, aren't they? I think there's definitely confusion around here.
Haven't we? So that should help there. It's not in our gift to ensure that there are to try and get one collection across the county. As you say, there's other things on the agenda like local government reorganisation, but at the moment we are with separate collections, but there are other things being implemented by government that may help on that or should drive better behaviours. Joe, on the incineration.
Yeah, just to build out the simpler recycling point that Anne made, an example, I think I touched on it, was food waste, and if I didn't, so what we're starting to see is a much sort of clearer direction on what every collection authority should offer. So next year we'll see the rollout of weekly food waste. That's mandatory. So it's not some will do fortnightly, some might and some might not. It will be rolled out across the board nationally. So we're starting to see this level of ambition that it doesn't really matter where you live in the country, you will get the same sets of services in terms of waste. Just on the question of how many incinerators might we need and where are they? At the moment in Leicestershire, we have a contracts with 2 energy from waste facilities, one that's near junction 23. If you drive up or down, you should see it. It's relatively new. And the other is we're actually a shareholder in the Coventry and Solihull Waste Disposal Company, which runs an energy from waste facility there. So we have a network of transfer stations and we manage the waste that all the districts collect and the waste that goes through our recycling house or waste sites. And we send it to, in terms of energy from waste, though we have landfill contracts, etc., we send it to or through those 2 contracts, and they tend to be 25+ year contracts. You need to have to plan into long term. You do still have to plan for the changes in waste arising. I would like to see residual waste go down. If LGR generates any boundary changes, not to politicise it, we'll have to plan for all of those changes in terms of how much waste we need to manage and where it needs to go, and not erode the ambitions to recycle as much of it as possible.
Thank you, Joan. And I think Mr. Smith had a question. Oh, okay, Mrs. Taylor.
So, sorry, didn't quite answer my question, but thank you for that. Do you think we'll need more incinerators then? Is that the plan? And I suppose my sub question to that is the impact on residents, because we have a lot of complaints about the incinerator at junction 23, and you know where we put them and the impact on residents is also going to be a serious consideration.
The short answer is, based on the contracts that we have in place at the moment, we would not be in a situation as the county council that we don't have a contract that can cover all the capacity we need for energy from waste. 30 years from now, 20 years, changes to boundaries, different question. But at the moment, we wouldn't be saying there isn't something built with enough capacity for Leicestershire. We do have enough capacity.
And Carruthers.
Just to add that, the whole premise of the government's waste changes is moving to the circular economy. So that's about taking more waste out of the system. There is less waste. We reuse, we don't produce it in the first place. We reuse it, etc. Then we recycle it. So ultimately, all these measures being brought in are about driving down waste. So that's just another factor. Those policy incentives of drivers are about reducing waste in the system. So that's another factor that comes into play with us trying to then work out what capacity we need in the future.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm confused as well, really. North West Leicestershire, where I live and where I represent as part of my Colville division, we've just gone through the world's longest consultation and one of the most engaging consultations as well. We finally got rid of those horrible yellow bags and the blue bags that blow all over the place and litter the environment, so that me and other guys go out each weekend and pick it all up again and put it back in the bin. But we're now getting this bin. It's not going to happen for at least 2 years. That's what we've been told. Obviously, we've got LGR in the way of this. Are we communicating this with the districts? Because we've got all these different districts doing different things. And if this comes to fruition, I'm a bit worried about my brand spanking new bin that I've already built a nice little shed for, that I might not get in the end. Thank you.
The short answer to that is we actively engage with all of the district councils around what they collect, the frequency of collections, the segregation of their materials. We stop short of, we don't direct the districts, that's not within our jurisdiction, it's within theirs to decide the shape, size, colour, types of bins, the frequencies in some cases of those collections. But we are actively engaging with them about what all the new legislation might look like and how that will be rolled out. There is always the opportunity for us to explore whether we can do that better and that be a more functional relationship. But I accept that they're looking at it from their financial perspective and us ours. In terms of the only other thing I'll add, and I know we've touched on local government reorg, obviously that would be a game changer if you ended up with a scenario where both the collection regime and the disposal arrangements were under one organisation or organisations, because you'd look from cradle to grave and you might change the processes and how you manage that. But at the moment we work within that 2-tier structure and we make sure that we're having full dialogue, because ultimately anything a district council picks up, at the point it's on whatever vehicle, they're duty bound to turn to the county council as the disposal and say, where do you want us to take it? So they have to be talking to us, because we won't have the contracts in place for the green waste, the food waste, etc., if they haven't engaged with us beforehand.
Thank you, Joe. Is that okay? Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, I recommend that the update is noted and the committee's comments will be recorded in the minutes. Which brings me to item 12. Date of next meeting of the committee is scheduled to take place on Wednesday, the 10th of September 2025 at 2 p.m. Item 13, as stated at the start of the meeting, I've got no urgent items. That concludes today's meeting, so thank you for all for coming along. Thank you for your contribution. Okay.